So back in 1965, CBS television first aired what would turn into one of its most popular TV shows of the late 60s, The Wild Wild West. Now, this Western was really about America's first two Secret Service agents. These Secret Service agents jumped on a train and went from town to town. Notice I didn't say city to city. It didn't really have cities back then. There were outposts and it was towns that they traveled to. So they went from town to town, hunting down bad guys, and of course, trying to take down plots that were designed to take over the world. Now, I'm not saying like when one Western Conference team goes to another Western Conference city, they're trying to stop a plot designed to take over the world. But what I am saying is on a night in, night out basis in the Western Conference, when one Western Conference team visits another Western Conference town, anything, and I do mean anything, is possible.
You're listening to the House of Takes NBA show with Dave Daba, the only NBA show in North America that believes the Rudy Gobert trade worked out for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Presented by Stealth.ltd.
Welcome back to the House of Takes NBA show. On tonight's show, we are going to talk about just, seriously, how wild everything has become in the Western Conference of your NBA association. I mean, just look at where the Phoenix Suns actually started the day out. Now, they started the day out in 8th spot in the Western Conference, with the Los Angeles Clippers and the Sacramento Kings still playing right now. They moved all the way up into the 5th spot in the Western Conference. That's 4 spots in literally 2.5 hours of basketball play. It has been an absolutely fantastic couple days of National Basketball Association basketball. Things are absolutely wild in the West. Just look at the Joker, who we left off of our MVP conversation podcast that we did a couple days ago, and we did it on purpose because it seems as if the Joker's really not trying to win the MVP this year. Well, if he was trying to win the MVP, he'd continue to put up performances like he did in Golden State today. 32, 16, and 16. Look, there's no doubt Jokic is by far the best player in the National Basketball Association right now. He's also the best basketball player I've ever seen who can't jump. That is Jokic. Now, SGA, who we think should win the Most Valuable Player of the Year award, at least as of right now, with about 25 games to go in the season, put up big numbers again today. 36 points, 5 and 7 against the Rockets in OKC's victory. Now, the Wild Wild West is exactly where we're at this point. My Minnesota Timberwolves and the Thunder are both tied for first place. They both have winning percentages this late in the NBA season over 700. It was one thing to say, well, maybe one of these teams could do something like that at some point in the next couple years. It's a whole other thing for both of these teams to do it this year and to be sitting atop of the Western Conference. Then you've got the Clippers and you've got the Nuggets. Clippers playing right now, so they're 2 games out. The Nuggets are 1.5 games out. You've got the Phoenix Suns, who are 6.5 games out, with the Pels as well. But then you've got the Kings, 7 games out, and you have the Dallas Mavericks sitting there at 7 games out. I think the Dallas Mavericks are extremely dangerous at this point. I think the Mavericks certainly could be on the edge of making it into a 4th spot in the Western Conference by the end of the season. barring any major injuries and any Kyrie Irving on or off the court meltdowns. They certainly can with the way Luka's playing. But in order for that to actually happen, either the Thunder or the T-Wolves or the Clippers or the Nuggets will have to completely fall apart. It wouldn't surprise me if one of those teams actually did fall apart. Maybe it's going to be because of injuries. Maybe it's not. Paul George, by the way, not playing tonight for the Clippers. It is just fascinating how wild things are actually in the Western Conference right now. You have the Warriors sitting there at 10 and the Lakers sitting there at 9. Like if the playoffs were to start today, the Warriors, Lakers, Mavericks, and Kings would all have to do battle with each other to just get into the playoffs. I mean, it is absolutely amazing where we're at this point. It's not as if like the Mavericks are having a bad season. They're 9 games over 500 right now. I mean, they're having a very good season and they're actually getting hot at the right time of the season. In their last 10 games, they're 7-11 or 7-3. So I sort of look at this Western Conference and I think, like, night in and night out, you really never do know. Look, I mean, well, outside of the Portland Trailblazers, which I just think is historically a bad basketball team, at least the G League version of the Memphis Grizzlies plays hard night in and night out. And then you've got Wemby and the San Antonio Spurs. Now, if you're a Greg Popovich fan, just put me on mute for the next 30 seconds. Because, look, I mean, I love Popovich. But at this point, this San Antonio Spurs, with the roster that they currently have, should be better than the G League version of the Memphis Grizzlies. They should not be sitting there 4 games behind the Portland Trailblazers right now, Greg Popovich. Wemby has been playing fantastic. He's all but locked up the Rookie of the Year award at this point. And I think the San Antonio Spurs are probably at that point where they need to have a conversation with Mr. Popovich and say, hey, Greg, maybe it's time just to move all the way back up into that president's role and let's let somebody else coach the team. All right. In terms of the rest of this Western Conference and what could go on between now and the end of the season, I mean, when you actually think about it and you actually look at it, and yes, I'm a big Minnesota Timberwolves fan, and yes, I'm a big Los Angeles Laker fan, and yes, I live in the Silicon Valley, which makes me a Warriors fan to some degree. But I can't, in any good conscience, actually sit here and think the Timberwolves or the Thunder are actually going to finish atop of the Western Conference. I think when we look at where we're at this point, if I had to make a prediction and if I was jumping on ESPN's bet app, I would probably go ahead and say that I thought that the Denver Nuggets were ultimately going to win the Western Conference regular season title this year. They're a game and a half out. Jokic is putting up big numbers again. Everybody seems to be healthy on that team. They won the championship last year, and you can just see them starting to push on that gas pedal. All right, North America, I want to hear what you have to say, what you think about how this wild Western Conference is actually going to play out. All right, for the House of Takes NBA show, I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.
You've been listening to the House of Takes NBA show with Dave Daba, presented by Stealth.ltd.